So Michael Rapaport, remember him? He's an actor. He's been very pro-Israeli, but he's so unhinged now with his rants that he seems to be upset and now taking it out on Dave Smith and Joe Rogan. What did Dave Smith and Joe Rogan do? Well, Dave Smith and Joe Rogan, I guess now, according to Douglas Murray's perspective, they don't respect the experts. And, Douglas Murray wrote that article that sounds like a jealous ex-girlfriend about expertise. And Douglas Murray was saying to Joe Rogan that he doesn't have enough pro-Israeli people on his show or anybody else of that nature, to which I have to push back. Joe Rogan has had a lot of people on his show, ranging across the political spectrum, who are experts or comedians or actors or actresses in different, type of subjects or whatever. I listen, you can have criticism of a show or a podcast, but the one thing that's made very clear is throughout his entire time doing his show, he's had a lot of people of different opinions on there. But Michael got a little bit upset. But in order for you guys just to get started, before we play a video of Michael just raging out against Joe Rogan and Dave Smith, which, by the way, Dave Smith is probably out there in the middle like, Jesus Christ, I did not expect to mentally scar Douglas Murray and so many people who got triggered by that debate. I mean, my goodness, that it was a debate. It's simple. That's all it was. But it just goes to show just how thin-skinned people are, especially with what's happening in Gaza and between Israel and everything else in between. Now, I don't know Dave Smith personally. Okay. He has said he's a comedian, but he's had other people on his show, and he's also done his own research. And I'm going to say this to you, my audience: challenge everything, question everything, do your own research. And yes, even challenge Hardlands Media. Okay. Because what I expect from you, my audience, is to get different perspectives and points of view. When we do this morning show, I'm giving my perspective, my opinion, and my analysis. But for you, my audience, you acquiring knowledge is an ongoing thing. That's what I do too. I listen to different people. I may not agree with them, but I want to at least hear what they're saying. So before we pull up Michael, let's at least have some laughter, as a family should.
Have you been there?
Right, that's a good point.
You haven't been?
By the way, how is he in all these wars? Can I just go to wars? By the way, how are you allowed to just go to wars?
Is that the way you should at least
can you just
have the
go to
courtesy of going?
Can I just go to wars, or do I have to come back and say what people want me to say about the wars? Can I go to the wars and have my own opinions, or do I have to have the opinions?
Not if you want to go back.
That's right. That's right. It's very interesting, this war tourism. How do I get on this war tourism?
Yeah.
I'd like to go to the Ukraine.
Well,
I want to go. I want to go. I want to go to all this war tourism.
Do you have any awards that they can melt down and make bullets out of?
Joe, think about this. Do I seem like a guy that has a lot of awards?
Didn't you get one of those YouTube plaques when you hit 100,000?
I don't even know where they send it. I don't know where. I don't know where they're sending those YouTube plaques.
We've got a few of those.
But I like this idea of war tourism. I like the idea of going to a war and then coming back, having a very black and white view.
Yes, I've been there.
I get it, and I know, and interesting. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I love that.
You feel better than the other people.
Well, of course, there's a lot of people. It gets very murky. Most people I know that have been to war have a very murky, complex view of things. But it is good to go to a war and then come back and be as sure as you were before you came.
And you don't have to go for very long.
No, you go for an hour.
Couple hours.
It's a lunch.
Yeah.
It's lunch on the front line.
A flak jacket that says press.
Tea on the front lines, and then you come back and you have all the talk. Yeah.
Yes, the expertise, to be an expert. Now, look, as someone who went to Iraq twice, yes, I've been to Iraq, but I'm not going to call myself an expert, okay? I served 4 years in the Marine Corps. It is what it is. But let me just say this. All these people who are saying that they're experts, that's fine, but experts can get things wrong. Dave Smith does his own research, okay? You don't have to agree with him on any of his other policies, but if he's going to be informed about something, especially what's happening in Gaza, controversial statement here, Dave Smith isn't wrong. And it seems like everyone across the spectrum are looking at people like Douglas Murray as, why are you bitching about this debate? Douglas, were you not prepared to deal with a comedian? I mean, you should have been ready with your facts and information to destroy Dave Smith. And in my opinion, my own analysis, Dave curb stomped you. And how do I know? It's because of your New York Post op-ed, your little opinion piece. That's how I know. That's what I view. And everyone is laughing at you. Even those who might be your supporters, they're laughing at you. But somebody else decided to enter into the game. I apologize for this. Michael, it's a horrible way to pause this because it kind of looks like he's taking a dump. Prepare yourselves.
But Joe Rogan, it's an open discussion. You know, we're just floating ideas. We're not married to them being facts or not facts, and they don't have to be experts. We're having a talk. We're just having a talk. I'm smoking a cigar. Sometimes I smoke weed. We're just talking. That's Joe Rogan's series, and it's great for everything except for facts. It's great for everything except for people that are disparaging week after week, podcast after podcast, and not telling the truth and the reality of what has happened October 7th and beyond. So you bring on one scumbag after the next scumbag, and they say, well, I'm not an expert. I'm a comedian. I'm not an expert, but I know this. I'm not an expert on Hitler, but Churchill, but I'm not.
Okay, so hold on. Okay, because we're gonna try and get through all of this. We're gonna try as a family. I have watched Joe Rogan's content, and I've seen him push back on his guests, and all this talk from these comedians who have done their own research. It's not a right-wing whistle point. It's not none of that. You know what it is? It is an intellectual, correct decision that every person must make. Do your own research. Now, I know about the memes. Oh, you do your own research. That's so right-wing. Shout out to Bad Cookies. I love you. That's why I love my audience. My audience, 10 out of 10, the best. I got the best live stream audience ever. But I want to be clear on this. You're calling these people scumbags. Okay, they may not be experts, but the videos on TikTok, Instagram, X, Facebook, YouTube, and various other social media platforms showing hospitals, schools, community centers, residential homes, apartments, etc., refugee centers being blown up, it's pretty disgusting. Men, women, children starving. That's horrible. People dying. Little kids dying before they even knew the world. That's pretty gross. It's pretty gross. And I just want to remind everybody too, and this I say this not to be mean or malicious, but shout out to my boomers, my Gen Xers, my fellow millennials, and Gen Z. We have all been bombarded in some form or another by comic books or novels, movies or TV shows or video games, in which when a crisis or a genocide is happening, we will step up and do the right thing to stop it, so that something like the atrocities of World War II never happen. I am so very sorry, but that's not going to happen because war is business, and business is good. Our politicians are making money. So if a comedian wants to step up and say, hey, I don't like this genocide that's happening. Hey, I don't like these war crimes happening. That doesn't make them a scumbag. That makes them a human being. It makes all of us human beings.
Not an expert on the conflict in the Middle East, but here's all of my thoughts. I'm a comedian, but we're not going to do any jokes. We're not going to talk comedy. I'm just going to expound on all my thoughts. Joe Rogan will have all these people come on and talk about history, Israel, Jews, genocide, and Hamas. But if I came on Joe Rogan, I was like, Joe, you know, I'm an MMA fan. I've never been in a ring. He would say, have you ever, you know, like worked out MMA? No. But do I have to do it to be an expert? Do I have to actually spar MMA? Can't I just It's my opinion. I've talked to some fighters, and my brother and I, we used to pillow fight. Joe, my brother would use the heavy pillow, and when he hit me with that heavy pillow a couple times, it hurt. So I know what it's like to get hit in the head. Not like by John Jones, but I know what it's like to get hit in the head. But Joe, listen, I'm thinking, because my brother, after we would have pillow fights, sometimes we would do the choke out game where I would let him choke me to sleep, and then he'd wake me up.
That's very disturbing, especially with the recent stuff that never mind. You know what? That's I wonder.
And I'd laugh and I'd be like, oh my God, that was so crazy. And then afterwards we'd continue fighting or wrestling or doing what we do. I think Joe Rogan, when these fighters get choked out, tap them awake, give them a standing 8 count. If they want to keep fighting, let them keep fighting. Wouldn't that be so exciting, Joe? Wouldn't the crowd go crazy if one fighter gets choked out, you give them a standing 8 count, then they come back and win? Joe Rogan will be like, what the are you talking about? You have no idea what you're talking about. Have you ever been choked out? No. Have you ever been in a UFC cage? No. It's just my thoughts. It's my ideas. It's my opinion. Joe Rogan would be like, what the? He wouldn't, the conversation would be over. If somebody came on Joe Rogan podcast and started talking about, the second show on a Friday night, it's not that bad. I don't know why comics, Steve Martin, publicly wrote in his book. I don't know why you guys always complain about the second show Friday night. Have you ever been on stage second show Friday night? No. But have you ever done comedy? No. But he wouldn't entertain that. Churchill, World War II, Jews, Gaza, genocide, anything goes on Joe Rogan. It's irresponsible.
Oh my God. Sorry. He sounds like those liberal nitwits who are saying, Joe Rogan is a right-wing Trumper. I mean, my goodness. I remember the 4 years under Trump's first term. And then, of course, the other 4 years under Joe Biden. All right. And that probably explains why Joe Rogan just had it up to here, especially after 2020, because he was apologizing a lot, You had all these liberals and latte drinking know-it-all, vote blue no matter who. People say, Joe Rogan's irresponsible for having this person on the show. Joe Rogan should do this. See, there are SJWs on the left, we all know them. But there are also SJWs on the right. And that's something the right has to come to terms with. That sounds exactly what those liberals were saying to Joe Rogan. It's so irresponsible. So irresponsible. Douglas Murray went into a debate with comedian Dave Smith and got smacked around. Okay? This is just my opinion, but the more I think about it, that opinion is going to become a solid fact just by the way people are just melting down about it. I feel sorry for Dave Smith. He's like, oh my God, they're still harping on this. They're still talking about this. Like, get over it. All right, Michael, if you got such a problem with Joe Rogan, debate Dave Smith then. Go on Joe Rogan's podcast. You go there. Dave Smith goes there. Joe Rogan in the middle. Make it happen. Because you say it's so irresponsible if it triggers you so much, but maybe this is the way you want to get attention. Maybe this is the way you want people to notice you, senpai. Notice me, senpai.
You wouldn't have these sort of floating conversations or ideas about MMA because you're an expert on it. You know it. You live it. You created it. You've done it. Stand-up comedy, same. You wouldn't let people come in there and tell you about how a joke this and what it's like performing on the road versus different between performing in a theater, which is different from performing in an arena. You wouldn't let anybody have a conversation about it unless they've done it. You got these people on this, Dave Smith, Douglas Murray, ask him, when was the last time you've been to Israel? I've never been. If you've never...
You never been? You never been? No. But that doesn't stop Dave Smith from listening and interviewing with experts like how Jimmy Dore has on his show. He's had 2 people who've been, and a couple more, but I'm going to use 2 examples. Shout out to Aaron, the Buzzsaw Mate. There you go. Aaron Mate. And of course, you have Max Blumenthal. Those 2 journalists, award-winning journalists, have been to war zones, have been in some very dangerous places. And they brought in their expertise and, yes, even hosted the Jimmy Dore show and informed Jimmy and his audience. I was watching those interviews. I got informed. Now, Jimmy, of course, absorbing that information, went to check out other sources too. Now, he's never been to Israel or Gaza, but he's talked and done enough fact-checking to do that. So has Dave Smith. And what, that doesn't qualify them for at least knowing about the subject matter and what's happening there? I mean, I'm doing my own research there too, as are all of you, as I expected from all of you. As you should.
Been, I can't talk about it. Yeah, you could talk about it, but why don't you go, Dave Smith, Joe Rogan? You have all these people come on and talk. Why don't you go? You're Joe Rogan and Janine, the Joe Rogan podcast, live from Judea, Samaria. Interview some of these terrorists. Interview some of the widows of IDF soldiers. Interview some of the hostages who've gotten out of Gaza. Talk to them. Joe Rogan, instead of talking to Dave Smith and the rest of these dum-dum.
Dum-dums. That's all you got. Hold on. Bad cookies with the palate cleanser. That is called audience feedback. You always ask the audience how the show was and how you can improve at it. At least good comedians do that, Michael, which explains why you suck at it. And here's the thing. When you do a show like this, hey, audience feedback is fundamentally important, be it news or any other kind of genre. We on YouTube, Instagram, Rumble, Kick, etc. Audience feedback is key. Now, why did that interview, that debate between Douglas Murray and Dave Smith on the Joe Rogan podcast trigger those who support Douglas Murray? It's because Douglas Murray went in there as the expert and got schooled, got curb stomped, got slapped around. Dave Smith at least came prepared. And what did Douglas Murray? Sit upon his ivory tower and look down. Look, listen. Just want to pull up this video here. Post October 7th, Doug. Doug, what do you guys say?
Almost every campus in America, the major ones certainly, are filled with instances like this of Jewish students being harassed.
If you stand in Britain with a Hamas flag, you should not be allowed to be free.
We should not have to put up with people marching through our streets.
You should be arrested, have your citizenship withdrawn.
They're not policing the law.
No, I understand.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have all of these videos of people inciting violence on the street.
You should not be given the right to insult and to taunt.
What's the point of having a law if you can't police?
Tell me about this emergency coalition against hate.
Now, hey, pre-Doug, post-Doug.
People are just deciding anything I don't like, I will perceive to be a crime against my particular group of people. And this is a whole industry now. It's an industry in the law. It's an industry in the police. People competing to be the most offended person. This is why we have the competition Olympics of offendedness, with people going to the police saying, I'm the most offended person. But we've got a lot more people on the side of free speech who actually loathe these censorious bullies, who loathe their priggishness, their boringness.
Well said, Doug. You smack them around. You smack yourself around.
Bullyingness, their endless vapidity and stupidity, their tendency to say that we have to educate themselves when they seem to have no knowledge at all. But it all comes down to one of the great gifts that Britain gave the world. The concept of liberty of speech is important not just because you need to know truthfully the widest possible array of arguments, but because you need to be able to find out if you yourself are in error. Clamp down on free speech, and you do not permit yourself the ability to find out when you're wrong. That's why free speech matters. It's one of Britain's great gifts to the world, and it's something that we should protect in this generation as much as those who went before us.
You got knocked the fuck.
And that's the thing about free speech. You know, Joe Rogan can do his show however which way he wants, just like I could do my show, and just like how Michael can do his show however which way he wants. Same thing for comedian Dave Smith, okay? And we do invite him to be on our show just to, get his perspective, his point of view. Because I'm pretty sure after that entire debate, so many people are now finger wagging. But notice, it's those that agree with Douglas Murray that are screaming the loudest, and everyone's looking at them with a side eye. It's almost as if those that are crying the loudest, those that are so furious at Rogan, are the ones that aren't prepared, are the ones that are acting childish and acting pretty nefariously, at least in my opinion. So I guess to anyone, Douglas, Michael, if you two want to go be tag team champions and go ahead and get onto the Joe Rogan podcast again, why don't both of you go back on the podcast? I'm pretty sure Joe would have you on. Dave Smith can be back on there too. And you know what? Hey, Dave, since you'll be facing off against, Michael and Douglas in this potential fight up, reach out to Aaron Mate or Max Blumenthal. Have one of those two back you up. It'll be a tag team fight, Hell in a Cell, in the Joe Rogan podcast. Why not? Let's go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and have this epic showdown debate. I think it'd make good internet views. It'd be content gold. Unless Douglas and Michael are afraid, because I'm pretty sure Dave Smith will say yes. Aaron Mate or Max would probably say yes. Joe Rogan would say yes. Will you take that? Will you take it up? Make it happen. Live and direct. Everybody's going to tune in. Let's see who wins that fight. Fight, 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 fight.